Before we start today's video, we want to bring you a short word from our sponsor, Hunt-A-Killer. After the past year, it's been so nice to get together with friends again. One of the first things I did with my friends was get together and solve a murder. Of course, I don't mean a real murder. Instead, we played another amazing season of Hunt-A-Killer. Hunt-A-Killer is a brilliant, immersive, role-playing game. Every box comes with clues like documents, puzzles, and audio recordings. It's your job to use these clues to eliminate suspects and find the killer. It's a bit like an escape room in a box, but you can do it from the safety of your own home. It also makes for an inexpensive night because you can supply your own drinks and you don't even need to hire a babysitter. I can't stress how much fun Hunt-A-Killer is. After I play with my friends, for weeks we talk about how much fun we had. The props are amazing and they look like they came from the set of a movie or TV series. One of the best parts of Hunt-A-Killer is that proceeds from every box goes to the Cold Case Foundation, an organization that is dedicated to helping with real-life cold cases. John E. Douglas, the pioneering FBI profiler and author of Mindhunter, is the chairman of the foundation. You should check out Hunt-A-Killer for yourself. Right now, you can go to huntakiller.com/criminallylisted and use the promo code criminallylisted for 20% off your first box. Once again, make sure you use the promo code criminallylisted for a 20% discount. Do you have what it takes to hunt a killer? Number 3. Zhu Caoyuan. The Legend of Mir 3 was a free-to-play, massively multiplayer, online role-playing game. It was released in 2004 by South Korean-based We Made Entertainment. The game was wildly popular in China and South Korea. One man who played it was 41-year-old Zhu Caoyuan, who lived in Shanghai, China. In February 2004, Zhu and a friend won a rare sword called a Dragon Saber. Several months later, in September 2004, Zhu loaned the sword to a friend, 26-year-old Zhu Caoyuan. Without permission, Zhu sold the sword for 7,200 yen, which was about $870. That is about 5 times the average monthly salary in Shanghai. When Zhu found out that Zhu sold a sniper weapon, he went to the police. But the police told him there was nothing they could do because the sword wasn't real, so technically a theft had not happened. Zhu offered to pay Zhu the money, but Zhu didn't see a cent. One day in October 2004, Zhu broke into Zhu's home while he was sleeping. Zhu then stabbed the 26-year-old man multiple times in the chest. Several stab wounds punctured his lung and his heart. After stabbing Zhu fled his home. He ended up turning himself into the police 2 hours later. In June 2005, Zhu Caoyuan was sentenced to death with a 2-year reprieve. That meant if he behaved himself in prison and no other crimes were attributed to him in the meantime, his sentence would be reduced to life in prison. It was also possible that his sentence could be reduced to 15 years of prison. Zhu Caoyuan's family was outraged by the decision. They wanted Zhu to be executed right away, and they said they planned on appealing the sentence. But it's unknown if they appealed. It's also unknown what happened to Zhu Caoyuan and what his current status is. Number 2. Antwan Ricks. In July 2007, brothers Jamir and Antwan Ricks lived in Lansdowne, Pennsylvania, which is a borough about 6 miles south of Philadelphia. Jamir was 13 and Antwan was 16. Their home life was far from idyllic because Antwan had a terrible temper. The boy's mother, Christine Ricks, said that one time during an argument, Antwan nearly pushed her over the banister on the second floor of their home. Another time, he slammed her head against a radiator. Antwan's brother Jamir was the opposite. He was calm and level-headed. He rarely caused problems, even on the basketball court, where his father said he was often pushed around. On July 15, 2007, Jameer and Antwan were at home with their mother, her boyfriend, and his son. Jameer and Antwan were playing the boxing game, Fight Night. The family had a rule with video games. When someone lost, their turn was over. Antwan was playing, and when he lost, he refused to give up the controller. He kept playing, and he lost again. But he refused to give up the controller to Jameer. Jameer went into the kitchen and grabbed a 6-inch steak knife. Jameer came back into the room, and he said he wasn't playing. Antwan supposedly got up and started punching Jameer. Jameer said he tried to yell to his mother for help, but Antwan put his hand over his mouth. So Jameer plunged the knife into his 16-year-old brother's chest. Jameer then screamed for help. His mother told her boyfriend's son to call 911. Her boyfriend got Antwan into his car and raced to the hospital. When the police arrived at the house, 13-year-old Jameer was standing outside and he told them he had stabbed his brother. Sadly, 16-year-old Antwan Ricks died 20 minutes after arriving at the hospital. The single stab wound had punctured his lung and his heart. Jameer was arrested after his brother's death. Christine Ricks was terrified that Jameer would be tried as an adult and he might spend the rest of his life in prison. She thought if that happened, it would have felt like she lost both of her sons. In May 2009, it was decided that Jameer would be tried as a juvenile. A few weeks later, Jameer pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter. In June 2009, he was sent to a juvenile counseling facility. He was to remain under supervision for 7 years until he was 21. Jameer's supervision would have ended in 2016. After he was sentenced, Jameer Ricks has stayed out of the news, and his current whereabouts are unknown. Number 1. Zhu Petric. In October 2007, the Petric family lived in Wellington, Ohio. 45-year-old Mark and his 43-year-old wife, Sue, had 3 children, Daniel, Heidi, and Holly. Only 16-year-old Daniel lived at home. Mark was a church pastor. Before moving to Wellington, the family lived near Columbus, Ohio. When they lived there, Mark and Sue were house parents who took in troubled teenagers. Daniel had been homeschooled, but he went to public school after moving to Wellington. He was an average student who didn't cause any problems. He played football and he snowboarded. Unfortunately, he was injured while snowboarding and he got a staph infection. He was in the hospital for 5 days and then he was homebound for about a year. Before his injury, he never really played video games. But without much else to do, he started playing Xbox 360. At some point, a friend introduced him to the Halo franchise. At the time, there were only 2 Halo games, but Halo was on its way to becoming one of the most popular video game franchises of all time. In most games in the franchise, the player controls the cybernetically enhanced super soldier known as Master Chief as he battles 2 alien races known as the Covenant and the Flood. Daniel really enjoyed the games. His father Mark did not approve of them because he thought they were too violent, so he banned them and other violent video games from the family's home. On September 25, 2007, Halo 3 was released. Daniel snuck out of the house and he bought the video game. For several weeks, he secretly played the game. Sometimes he would play for up to 18 hours a day. The one day in October, Sue caught Daniel playing Halo 3 and she told her husband. Mark took the game and put it in a lockbox. About a week later, on October 20th, 2007, Daniel opened the lockbox and got the game. He also took out his father's 9mm handgun. He then went into the living room where his parents were watching TV. He told them to close their eyes because he had a surprise for them. 45-year-old Mark and his 43-year-old wife, Sue, closed their eyes, thinking their 16-year-old son had a nice surprise for them. Instead, Daniel shot his father in the face. The bullet shattered his jaw. He then shot his mother in the head, arms, and chest. After shooting both of his parents, he said, "Hey Dad, here's your gun, take it." He put the gun in his father's hand. Daniel planned on making it look like his father killed his mother and then took his own life. That night, the Cleveland Indians were playing the Boston Red Sox in the American League Championship Series. Daniel's sister, Heidi, and her husband were planning on watching the game with Mark and Sue. When they showed up at the family's home, Daniel wouldn't let them in. Then they heard Mark groaning. So they pushed their way inside, and they found Mark and Sue. Mark was still alive, so Heidi's husband performed first aid on him. Heidi called 911. Daniel ran out of the house carrying the Halo game, and he got into his parents' minivan. He sped away from the family's home, but he was pulled over a short time later. On the front seat was Halo 3. Tragically, 43-year-old Sue Petric did not survive the shooting. But despite being shot in the face, Mark survived. In December 2007, 2 months after the murder, Mark said that he had overcome his anger and he had forgiven his son. Daniel was charged as an adult with murder and attempted murder. He was looking at the possibility of life without the chance of parole. Daniel went to trial in January 2009. There was no jury. Instead, he was tried by a judge. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. His lawyer argued that he wasn't responsible for his actions because of his video game addiction. His lawyer said he was playing video games up to 18 hours a day at the expense of sleep and food, so his mind wasn't right. He may not have even realized that his parents' deaths would have been real. Instead, they could have been like a death in a video game. Daniel's father, Mark, and his sister, Heidi, testified. They told the judge that they both forgave Daniel and they didn't want him to go to prison for the rest of his life. The judge ruled that Daniel wasn't insane at the time of the murder. But he did say if violent video games didn't exist, he probably would have never met Daniel. Daniel was found guilty of first-degree murder and attempted murder, and he was sentenced to 23 years to life in prison. Daniel Petric is currently 30 years old, and he is serving a sentence at the Grafton Correctional Institution in Grafton, Ohio. He'll be able to apply for parole in September 2030 when he'll be 39 years old. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Don't forget to check out the latest episode of our podcast, Into the Killing. We discuss a murder that the police didn't even know happened until it was solved by a dedicated investigator with California's Department of Justice. You can find Into the Killing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and anywhere you find great podcasts. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.